Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're really digging into something that gets right to the heart of how our world is changing. How can the world's biggest regional organization hold its largest summit ever? But for a lot of Europe, it all just boils down to three leaders. We're talking, of course, about the recent Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit, the SCO, held in Tianjin, China.
It is a bit strange, isn't it? I mean, the SCO, it covers a huge chunk of the world's population. And this summit, celebrating its quarter-century mark, August 31st to September 1st, 2025, was their biggest one yet.
Biggest one ever. And yet, as you said, European officials, the media, they mostly just tuned out the main agenda.
Yeah, completely. Their focus was laser sharp on Xi Jinping from China, Russia's Vladimir Putin, and India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi, everything else. Basically dismissed as diplomatic noise. Diplomatic noise.
That's pretty dismissive. And, well, that perception is exactly what we want to unpack for you today. Our mission here is to explore the SCO's surprising journey, where it started, look at the complexities now, and figure out why Tianjin became such a flashpoint. Why are people calling it a sign of an emerging new global order? We'll look at the U.S. reaction, European concerns too, so let's get into it.
Okay, and what's really interesting is how much the SCO has changed from its, fairly low-key origins.
Right, let's start there. Back in 2001, China, Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
How did Europe see it then? What was the initial feeling?
Well, initially it was seen as pretty small scale, regionally focused. Europe mostly thought it was just a way for China and Russia to sort of manage their rivalry in Central Asia. The general view, little global interest, definitely not the big stage it seems to be now.
Okay, so just regional power plays.
Yeah.
But then 9/11 happened. The U.S., NATO, Afghanistan. How did that change things for the SCO?
Oh, it changed things dramatically. Suddenly, those Central Asian SCO members, they became absolutely vital, crucial for U.S. military bases, supply lines into Afghanistan. It really unintentionally boosted the SCO's strategic importance.
And did leaders like Russia's Putin acknowledge this shift? Did they see the SCO's role changing?
Oh, definitely. Putin himself, speaking at the Valdai Forum back in September 2006, it's a big ideas forum in Russia, he was surprisingly open about it. He basically admitted, and this is almost a direct quote, "We didn't plan the SCO to be so prominent." He said it was set up for, trivial matters, border stuff, but then it grew, and suddenly there was this real demand for a strong SCO. That's why others wanted in.
So it wasn't planned, but events pushed it into the spotlight. A real lesson there, maybe. And this growing importance, this demand, it eventually caught Europe's eye too, didn't it? Around a specific time.
It absolutely did. European interest really seemed to peak around 2008. See, the U.S. was looking for a way out of Afghanistan, and Europe started worrying who would handle security in Central Asia, the Middle East. They saw these places as potential fertile grounds for future terrorist networks.
And the SCO seemed to offer a solution.
Exactly. The SCO had just set up its regional anti-terrorist structure, RATs, in Tashkent. So that seemed to directly address Europe's security worries, giving the SCO a job beyond just, borders.
And there was another factor around that time too, right? Energy security. Russia's invasion of Georgia in 2008 must have set off alarm bells in Europe.
Precisely. That really made Europe nervous about relying so heavily on Russian energy. Suddenly, SCO members like Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan, with all their oil and gas, looked very attractive. People started talking seriously about new energy corridors under the SCO.
So attractive that some European countries wanted closer ties.
Yes, Germany was holding the EU presidency in 2008, and they actually proposed formalizing EU-SCO links. Frank-Walter Steinmeier, who was foreign minister then, Germany's president now, is apparently quite keen. So there was this window, this moment of potential partnership.
A real moment. But clearly, that level of engagement didn't last. Those efforts stalled. What went wrong? How did the view shift?
Well, fundamentally, the relationship between Russia and the West just got worse, much more confrontational after that period. And as that tension rose, the SCO started being seen differently in Europe. It got labeled increasingly as just another anti-Western platform.
And did anything reinforce that view?
Yes. In 2010, Belarus joined as a full member. And, in European capitals, Belarus was often seen as, let's say, heavily influenced by Russia. One source called it a sad parody. So Belarus joining just seemed to confirm that anti-Western perception. It really cemented that image.
It's amazing how perceptions can shift like that. Okay, so fast forward to today. Given that history, what's the current European take on the SCO? Is that skepticism still there?
Oh, it's definitely still there, perhaps even stronger. The dominant view in Europe now seems to be that China and Russia's big plan to make the SCO a real alternative to Western institutions has basically failed. In fact, ironically, the fact that the SCO keeps getting bigger, adding more members, is now seen as its main weakness, its primary challenge. Too diverse, maybe too unwieldy to actually do anything effectively.
And are there recent examples that kind of back up this view? Things that show a lack of unity or effectiveness?
Yeah, there are a few pretty clear ones our sources point to, like the clashes between India and Pakistan back in May, both SCO members. The organization, pretty much silent, inactive.
Okay.
Then in June, the SCO did issue a statement condemning Israeli and U.S. attacks on Iran. But India, a major player, publicly distanced itself from that statement. Not exactly a united front.
Right, not unified.
And then there was the Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. They're dialogue partners with the SCO. When their long-running dispute was finally resolved in August, who got the credit for mediation? The U.S., not the SCO.
So the feeling is it's not really a useful tool for solving problems within the group.
That seems to be the harsh assessment. One source put it very bluntly. No member state thinks of the SCO as a useful mechanism for resolving any dispute. So big global ambitions on paper, maybe, but when it comes to resolving conflicts among its own, Europe sees a lot of weakness.
Okay, so despite those internal issues, the Tianjin summit did grab headlines. Europe might have ignored the wider agenda, but they were watching Xi, Putin, and Modi very closely. Let's focus on Modi first. It sounds like he was walking a bit of a diplomatic tightrope.
That's a good way to put it. His Tianjin visit was definitely seen as a significant diplomatic moment for India. And you have to remember the background. Pretty strained relations with the U.S. because of Washington's tariff policies. That context is key.
So his meetings were under intense scrutiny. He had key talks with Xi Jinping. What was the aim there? Especially after the Galwan Valley clashes in 2020.
The main goals were reviewing economic ties and, crucially, trying to explore avenues to normalize relations after Galwan, which had really poisoned the well. They apparently agreed on some practical steps, things like restoring border trade, reopening direct flights, and trying to ensure peace along the frontier.
And Modi tried to set a specific tone.
Yes, he emphasized that India and China should be development partners, not rivals. He stressed that their differences should not turn into disputes. Peace and tranquility on the border was the message. Also importantly, he brought up cross-border terrorism, mentioning a specific attack in Pahalgam from April 2025. Reports say he received understanding and cooperation of China on that.
Okay, quite a bit covered with Xi. Now, what about Putin? The reports mentioned palpable camaraderie, smiles, hugs, even sharing a car. What was that about?
Well, that visual, that display of warmth, it sends a powerful signal, doesn't it, about the strength and history of India-Russia ties. Modi said something like, even in the most difficult situations, India and Russia have always walked shoulder to shoulder. Putin called Modi his dear friend. Very warm language.
And did Ukraine come up?
It did. Modi reportedly welcomed recent peace efforts during his meeting with Putin, hoping for a quick end to the conflict. And it's interesting, before the summit, he'd apparently had a lengthy phone conversation with Ukraine's President Zelensky, seemingly to coordinate their positions. It really shows India trying to maintain connections on all sides, that balancing act again.
Okay, so this Modi-Putin-Xi bonhomie, as one source called it, understandably didn't go down well in Washington. Yeah. What was the U.S. reaction, specifically on the trade front?
No, it definitely sparked what were called stark U.S. reactions. The trade issue is framed by the U.S. as this two-pronged problem, leading to those 50% tariffs on India, prong one, 25% for unfair trade. The U.S. argument is that India has the highest tariffs of any major country, nicknaming them the Maharaja of tariffs.
Maharaja of tariffs, okay. And the second problem.
The other 25% is tied directly to Russia. It's because India is buying oil from Russia. The U.S. view seems to be that India isn't just buying out of necessity, but is actually profiteering, buying cheap Russian crude, refining it, and selling it on at higher prices.
So it's economic pressure, but there was political criticism too.
Oh, absolutely. Direct criticism of Modi. One line was about him getting in bed with the two biggest authoritarian dictators, meaning Putin and Xi, which the U.S. found particularly jarring given India's status as a democracy and its own history of friction, Cold War, and sometimes hot war with China.
And did U.S. officials downplay the summit itself?
Yes, a U.S. Treasury chief reportedly called the whole SCO summit performative and dismissed the member states as bad actors. So very strong language, showing real displeasure with India's perceived alignment.
Right. So while the U.S. is expressing that displeasure, China and Russia are using the summit to push their vision. What was the message coming from Xi and Putin in Tianjin?
They were definitely presenting a united front, promoting this idea of a multipolar world order. President Xi set the stage, saying the world's entered a new phase of turbulence. He warned that the shadows of Cold War mentality and bullying haven't gone away.
And what was his proposed solution to this turbulence?
His call was to advocate for equal and orderly multipolarization of the world, also inclusive economic globalization and building a more just and equitable global governance system.
Okay. Equal and orderly multipolarization. What does that actually mean in practice? How is that different from now?
Essentially, it's pushing back against a world order dominated by the U.S. Xi's vision is one where power is shared among several major global players, not just the West. Each major pole would have an equal voice in how the world is run, rather than one country calling the shots. It's a direct challenge.
And did he back this vision up with concrete offers?
Yes, he focused on economics, urging SCO members to use their collective mega-scale market and complementary economies. He even offered substantial financial support, 2 billion yuan, about $280 million, in free aid, plus 10 billion yuan, roughly $1.4 billion, in loans to an SCO banking group. Clear steps to build alternative financial structures.
And Putin was singing from the same hymn sheet, reinforcing this anti-Western stance.
Very much so. Putin claimed the SCO had revived genuine multilateralism. He said it's building a new security system for Eurasia that will replace the outdated Eurocentric and Euro-Atlantic models. And predictably, he blamed the West for the conflict in Ukraine, fitting that narrative.
So they're not just criticizing, they're actively positioning the SCO as an alternative.
Exactly. They're presenting the SCO as offering real alternatives to institutions led by the U.S. Things like a potential new development bank, more energy cooperation, even promoting China's Beidou system as an alternative to GPS. It's a comprehensive counteroffer.
So let's bring it back to Europe. They might dismiss the summit overall, but you mentioned they are watching certain things very closely. What specific developments are worrying European security specialists?
Right. Despite the dismissive tone, they are keeping a close eye on several things. One big one is Iran's nuclear program. Capitals like London, Paris, Berlin are watching the new Iranian president, Pezeshkian. They want to see if Russia and China will fully support him if he refuses to cooperate with international nuclear inspectors. That could trigger fresh and crippling economic sanctions, which is a major concern.
And military concerns regarding Iran, too.
Yes, they're also looking for any signs that Iran might be buying advanced Russian or Chinese weapons, specifically to repair its air defenses after those Israeli strikes. That would obviously change the military balance.
Okay, nuclear issues, arms sales. But what's the biggest worry for European governments coming out of Tianjin, particularly thinking about U.S. trade policy?
The number one concern, according to our sources, seems to be any sign of closer cooperation between India, China, and Russia in standing up to U.S. President Donald Trump's trade policies, especially those tariffs on India for buying Russian oil. Europe basically expects Modi to defy the U.S. on this, and they expect the SCO as a group to condemn the tariffs.
So that's expected. What would cross a line for Europe? What would really be seen as damaging their interests?
The analysis suggests that anything that goes beyond that, beyond just defiance and condemnation, would be seen as a problem. Specifically, any indication that China and India are contemplating closer cooperation to defy Western economic sanctions on Russia, that would be treated as a direct blow to Europe's interests. It shows how tied together these economic and political pressures are.
And we're already seeing the economic fallout from things like U.S. tariffs more broadly, aren't we?
We are. It's not just hypothetical. Singapore's Prime Minister Wong has mentioned they might have to cut their GDP forecast partly because of Trump's tariffs. And you even have Chinese companies looking at listing in Singapore because of the ongoing trade tensions. It really shows the wide ripple effect these policies have globally.
So wrapping this up, this deep dive really shows the SCO, maybe despite its internal issues, positioning itself quite strategically as a major non-Western force. Tianjin felt like a clear signal, didn't it? Enhanced coordination, a deliberate pushback against U.S. policy, with China and Russia really driving this multipolar world idea.
Absolutely. And while Europe might want to write it off as just diplomatic noise, you can't really ignore it. The meetings, the statements coming out of Tianjin, they directly challenge the way the world has been run. It creates this really complex picture for trade, security, alliances. The landscape is definitely shifting.
It certainly is. Which leaves us with a big question, maybe something for you, our listener, to think about. Given this clear message from Tianjin, this push for a multipolar world, this challenge to Western institutions, what does it actually mean for the future? How will international cooperation work? And maybe more pointedly, are the global structures we have now really up to the task of handling this kind of shift? Something to ponder. We'll be back soon with another deep dive.